Ladies and gentlemen of Dinuba and also Reedley in Fresno County and Tulare County, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you and present to you Dr. Elizabeth Stewart.
This is the great thing. This is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I think that belongs to you, doesn't it? Yes. Okay, so does anybody know what this is? And I'll tell you a funny story about this, which is I had something similar. I was called in to do an appraisal of a whole household. And I was sitting in the drawing room with the husband and wife, and he was going through some old papers, and he was tossing crumpled up paper into a wastebasket. And the wastebasket looked a lot like this. And I said, that's fantastic. It's Native American. I think this is Pima. It's a certain tribe. It has that look to it. And it's absolutely in perfect, beautiful condition. So what is the value of such a thing today? Well, I'm surprised you, it's about $5,000. And yeah, it really is. It could be more, actually. So why is it more? Okay, so let's think about it this way. There's 3 categories of Native American material. The first category was Native American material made for the tribe. The second category was when there was contact with what they call the West. So our aesthetic, right? So our European trained aesthetic. So Native American material that is made for the tribe is much more geometric and harder to understand. Then the second wave, of course, is made for the Western eyes, so it's a little easier to understand. Then the third wave is called trading post material. And trading post material is super easy to understand, and therefore you get the bracelets, the Navajo turquoise stuff, and the rugs that are, they don't look like the real thing. So this is the real thing. It's really tight. It could probably hold water. In some cases, these were made to hold water. It's just beautiful. Do you remember where you got it? Your grandmother's. Isn't that beautiful? And it's so subtle, but it's so beautiful. So this, I think you're absolutely right. This is probably the best thing in the show, I think. So this is, it's grasses. So their question was, what's it made out of? Every tribe had their own special sauce. In other words, their special combination of grasses and barks, and the dye that you see in the darker, this is all natural dye as opposed to aniline dye or chemical dye. So this is all natural. It's all native to their area. So, the Northwest had a different combination of weeds and grasses. In this area, I think that this probably, I don't know, it looks to me to be, was your grandmother from California? Okay. Okay. So this could be Crow or Cree. If it's from the Illinois area, it could be Crow or Cree. But it's just beautiful and very, very valuable. One of the reasons it's valuable is this is very large for a Native American piece of material. This is large. Then also, you see this little item here. This is a lighter, and it's made by Ronson. Ronson is the best lighter that you can purchase or used to be able to purchase. Now, there's 2 categories of things that are hot right now because they're getting obsolete. One of them is smoking materials because people are stopping smoking. The other thing is sewing materials because a lot of people don't sew anymore. And so the lighter itself is, it's a good question. If you wanted to, how would you sell a lighter like that? Well, you'd go to the collectors clubs. So if you've got something kind of obsolete, something that you'd like to sell, but you're not sure where to go, try to research the collectors club for the item. There's collectors clubs for almost everything, and lighters is one of them. So be the Ronson Collectors Club. I think you'd probably get $200, $300 for such a lighter. Okay, so the next thing, can everybody see on the screen? This is the flow blue. Well, what is flow blue? Well, first of all, this is it's a covered vegetable dish, But flow blue is an interesting thing because it was a mistake. What I mean by mistake is there was a factory in England that didn't mix their chemicals right, and the blue bled into the white glaze. And they'd throw it out. They'd throw it out the back. And the next morning it would be gone. A whole 500 pieces. Big mistake. So they try the experiment again. They'd fire them up. In this case, it was another mistake. They'd throw it out the back. They were gone the next day. Turns out that caught on. People liked it. They liked it because it was soft, it was interesting, and so they figured, okay, instead of throwing it out, let's sell it. And so they began to sell what we call flow blue. And the value of such a thing, the flow blue there, you can see the blue is kind of muddy, but that is mistake turned into actual cash because it caught on. It was the Beanie Baby of its day. So the value of that is probably $200. What do we have next? All right, so that's a good question. So the age of the flow blue is right about 1860 to 1880 is the heyday of flow blue. So it's the third quarter of the 19th century. This is kind of interesting. So Mardell was telling us about this, and John, who's our photographer for our firm, I asked John if he would research this before we got here tonight because Sonia was kind enough to send us this as a photograph. And so John researched it, and I found out, do you want to talk about it? Come on up here. Yeah. I will tell you the background of this. This is fantastic. This is to Mardell, and Mardell's grandfather made a rug for Dwight Eisenhower that had his portrait in the rug. And it's right now in the museum, the Eisenhower Museum.
James Anthony Wills was the photographer, but or maybe I better hold it. This might be easier. But he was more a portrait painter, and he would travel around the country painting famous, wealthy people. And I believe this was a portrait, but it also turned out to be a great picture. And because Eisenhower couldn't sit still for the whole painting, he took a picture and then painted the picture. It's in the presidential library. I believe the painting entered the library around 67. So that means this was taken late 60s, a few years before his death. And what else? I think that it...
you found the value of it.
Yeah, the value of it is $300 to $500. The signature has a little smear on it. That could be an issue for somebody who's a collector, and who knows. I'd insure it for $1,000 though if you wanted to insure it. And I have a little gift for if anybody can answer my trivia question. Does anybody know Eisenhower received a horse while in office? Does anybody know the name of the horse?
That was the wife. Not the horse, the wife. That was the wife.
Nobody knows the name?
That's classic.
Doodle Dee Doo was the name of the horse. Well, because I have a gift, I'll give you one more chance. Does anybody know what his first name was before he became...
Doodle?
No. Huh? No. No, it was very American. Huh? No, it was David. But all right. You did?
Yeah, she said.
All right. Well, then I will give you the prize.
gift.
In about 1,000 years, it's going to be worth $1 million. It's an Ike silver dollar.
Oh, wow!
$1.25 right now.
So what's next? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, cool. Okay. Since I was in Dinuba last, we had the great honor to be appraiser for, I think you might know the name is a comedian, Jonathan Winters. And Jonathan passed away And we did the appraisal for his $160,000 collection, 160,000 piece collection, mainly of metal toys. And we worked for his kids, and we helped disperse the estate. Fascinating, fascinating job. Absolutely fascinating. And I'll tell you a secret. You know, Robin Williams was a great friend of Jonathan's, and part of his wishes, Jonathan's wishes, was he had written that he wanted a yellow airplane that was called Friendship. It was a Fokker Friendship that Amelia Earhart actually flew in. It was the small model of that, scale model, which it was in cast iron. And he actually left that to Robin Williams. And so our office was in charge of getting that to Mr. Williams, who died shortly after. Yeah, it was just amazing. But the thing is that these cast iron toys can be worth a whole bunch. And I gotta tell you something, the people that like these the best are usually men, not children, but grown men. You know, it's sort of like the train guys. You know the model train guys? They're usually men, they're usually of a certain age, and they know everything about model trains. Jonathan was kind of a person that knew everything about these cast iron toys and metal toys like this. So the thing that we look at with toys is always condition. Unless they're extremely rare, we always look at condition. And the condition of this is not the greatest, but the decal work is still there. It is missing a vital thing. There would have been, I don't know, you guys that are more car people than I am, there would have been a thing like this with some kind of a hoist. Yeah, there would have been that. I know that from looking at this type of thing. I don't know what it's for, huh?
Looks like there was a tailgate on it.
A tailgate, yeah.
Yeah,
And some kind of a hoist of some kind. So it's not complete, but it's very sweet. If it was in good shape, it'd be $1,000. If the condition was great, it'd be $1,000. Now, not to everybody. I wouldn't pay $1,000 for it if it was in great shape. But to the toy collectors, it is. You see, people really do pay a lot for these toys. This particular piece is probably a $200 object. But still, can you believe it? The other thing that is currently not, thank you, Sonia, that's, yeah. The other thing, yeah.
How old was it?
So I think that is probably 30s, 40s, 1930s, 1940s. The 1947, yeah. Thank you. So the other thing that I'm so grateful to you people that you haven't brought me tonight any dolls. I hate dolls. I can't stand dolls. Dolls haunt me, and I don't like the look of them. And I always go to these roadshows and somebody has like an entire doll collection, and they scare me. So I'm so grateful that I just have a cast iron, truck and not a doll. Dolls, by the way, are not popular on the market, but old toys like that are. Yeah. Oh, the rocking chair. Okay, so we can date this by the style. There's a certain look to it, which is a little bit Gothic looking. You see the top is little like churchy looking Gothic features. So this is a style called the Gothic Revival. The Gothic Revival is 1870 to 1880. And so right there we know the chair is coming into that area, 1870 to 1880. And it is a lady's chair, probably used for nursing. You see the arms are perfect for that. And they're also, this is made of ash. Ash is very bendable. And the thing is that you're saying to yourself, how did they get that thing to bend like that? Well, I'll tell you. There was a gentleman who came from the South who invented a system for bending wood like that in a compressed, I don't know, it was like a machine. It compressed the moisture and it heated it to where you could actually bend the wood. This caught on in Germany, and a guy named Thonet developed this process, and Thonet actually was responsible for all the chairs on the Titanic. And they also were bent like this. This isn't like finding a twig that's bent in this certain shape, but there had to be a process for how that's done. And so this is in that style. These chairs are sometimes, they're called nursing chairs or carpet bag chairs, because this would have been from carpet originally. And I think this belongs to our esteemed caterer who made that beautiful meal. And she said, you know, she sits in it quite a lot, or she did up to a point where her upholsterer said, don't sit in it anymore. But they're very sturdy. They really are for what they are. I mean, a full-grown man, maybe not. But yeah, our tiny little caterer, I think it's fine. You can sit in there. Yeah. The value of that, you know, not a lot. I mean, by the time you get into the mid-19th century, the second and third quarter of the 19th century, you have quite a few pieces of furniture. In other words, there's machine production really ramps up, especially in this country. And it's not the same as 18th century furniture. It's not the same value. And so the value of that is probably $200 to $300. Boys, flip the flying arrow. Watch it fly 100 feet high in the sky. This is what you call low tech, but really fun low tech. So that's the arrows, and you can flip it and make it fly. Why is this valuable? Anybody tell me? It has the original box. The original box. Remember, we were talking about graphic design. So this is all the original box, and harmless and lots of fun. Okay, how harmless is this when you've got a 5-year-old kid that's whipping this into the sky with a catapult and it comes down? I don't know. And yeah, harmless and lots of fun. It always strikes me, it's a tradition in advertising to say exactly what it's not. So it's a tradition in advertising. A beautiful silk scarf with a wonderful history. A lady that, what did she say, Sonia?
Here, I'll give you this.
Yeah. She says Cornelius and Elizabeth Penner-Froza were married in 1863 in Ukraine. The scarf was a wedding gift from the husband to the wife. Their daughter, Maria Froza Janssen, got this scarf. Then it was passed to her daughter, Bertha Janssen Volgamut. I received it from my mother in 1985, signed Hervana Volgamut. And so what is this? Well, this is a jacquard loomed silk piece. When I say jacquard loomed silk piece, believe it or not, the first analog computer was the jacquard loom. So how Mr. Jacquard invented that in the late 18th century was he took punch cards, many, many, many punch cards, and each part of wherever the yarn, in this case the silk, was going in a certain loom, that punch card told where that was supposed to go. And it was really the late 18th century, the first analog computer. Do you understand what I'm saying? It very similar to the computer, the old analog computers. And this is an old jacquard style silk. The value of that, I would say, is about $200. Kind of rare. Kind of rare. Oh, yes. Now I get to make a joke. Sonia's going to bring, yes. Now these were the days. Because if you went out, you got lucky and you were asked out on a date, you got to go out and you got to carry this. And what you'd carry in this would be a little lipstick and maybe a coin, maybe a handkerchief, maybe some powder, right? So take a look. Kind of different days, huh? So this is.
Hard to carry that just on your wrist.
Yes. So this was just a ladies' evening bag when actually your date actually paid for your dinner. And so that's a beautiful little piece. This is Bohemian beadwork. It either comes in glass beads or sometimes it's steel beads. And so Bohemian beadwork, there are many collectors for such a thing, and the value of this is about $150. So this is a really interesting painting because parts of it are 18th century, and the expression on her face, by the way, her name is Marie Antoinette, and Marie is done in, she's painted in her gown in which she played the shepherdess, right? She's a very wealthy mistress, but Louis XVI, she played the shepherdess, and she'd have, Le Petit Trianon was built for her to pretend that she was a shepherdess. So she's in her bows as a shepherdess. The face, very 18th century, but so a lot of overpainting and a lot of later additions, a lot of things that stylistically I look at it and I say, well, this doesn't work. It doesn't fit. This is 19th century. There's a lot of touching up. If you look at it against the light, you'll see a lot of touching, a lot of overpainting. A lot of times these old mastered 18th century pieces weren't signed. They were court paintings. They'd come over from Europe, and people here would fix them up. They would add things, they'd take out things. Sometimes there were cows added. In this case, there's a nice bouquet of flowers added. And since it's not signed, we don't know who the artist was, but we can estimate that piece is probably worth, I'd say, $1,000 to $1,500, just by the quality of the painting. It's very nice. Yeah. And who's to say, underneath some of the overpainting, you might find a signature. I doubt it, because usually those things were kind of, you know, let's do Marie Antoinette, because Marie Antoinette was a very popular figure to paint. It's a good scale. 18th century, well, I think the third quarter of the 18th century, the last quarter of the 18th century, the face is very 18th century, the style of the painting of the face. But all the extra bells and whistles are very much, to me, 19th century. Also, what I do also many times is I'll look at the canvas itself. The canvas is old, but it's probably been relined in the 1920s. What does it mean to reline a canvas? Well, it's the old canvas, but there's a new back of new canvas put on there, and that canvas was put on there in the 20s. So it's hard to look at it and say, oh, for sure, that it was 18th century, but I think it was. Stylistic analysis will tell. Well, there is something really special here, and is my paperwork still there with it? No, okay, I can remember. That's all right, that's okay. No, that's okay, Sonia, yeah. So Sonia sent me a picture of this because it intrigues Sonia. And this is in, it's a Bible that was written in Romani, which is a mix of the Japanese language and English. And I looked into it a little bit, and the surprising thing is, when I can't find something, and I've got, 30 years of databases, and I've got some really incredible search engines in 2 offices on 2 coasts, and I couldn't find much about this. So I looked into it a little bit, and there are 10 or so copies of that book, but they're only in private libraries. And they're in university libraries or museums. The author of that, I actually found out who actually was in charge, the author of making that. And what was really interesting, because, Japan at the time, we're talking about the last quarter of the 19th century, and it was illegal. There it is, thank you. So it was James C. Hepburn that actually was the gentleman in charge. And you come to find out that the Japanese officials were afraid that Shintoism would be disposed by Christianity. And so Christianity and any Bibles, nothing was allowed. So this was a very clandestine thing that this Bible was actually thought of and done, and it had to be done very, very silently. And the Japanese that helped this James Hepburn do it were very, very brave. And so what I did also for you is, here's the libraries where they are in. But the good news is, since I couldn't find one for sale or recently sold, the only things that are like this are in private collection. So the question is, how much is it worth? I can't tell you, because there's no comparable sale, right? So if you buy a house, you're like, well, that house there sold for this, and next to it, it's sold for that. But there's no comparable sales for this. It's only in private hands. So I can't tell you what it's worth. We can say, now, I did find out, I think there was 48 books like that published, and there's only 10 remaining. So the rarity factor certainly has something to do with the value. If I was going to insure it, I would probably insure it for $2 to $3 grand, maybe more. Maybe more if the condition was better. But yeah, the condition is... It's wanted by many people. Many of the volumes I found like this are in ebook form for scholars for research purposes. So I do like the fact that she is storing it in paper. The worst thing you can do is store things like that in any polycarbon-based material. No plastic bags, no dry cleaning bags, no Tupperware, nothing with plastic, because it'll go, eventually it'll really destroy the leather, it'll destroy the paper as well.
Hey, I have a question. Would there be any benefit to restoring it, or is it better to leave it as is?
Okay, so the question is, could it be rebound? And there are people that do binderies, that do rebinding like that. I would say because of the extreme rarity, probably not. I don't think it's a wise thing to do, because let's say eventually it is given to a museum or given to or sold. Every museum has their own standard of restoration. And that applies to paintings as well. I always think it's funny, people are like, let me restore this completely. My cousin so-and-so is a great painter, and she'll restore it before we give it to the museum. What the museum's got to do is completely take all that off the canvas then, because they have their own way of doing the restoration. And the ways of doing that restoration changes as each new development in chemical analysis changes. So it may be something, that tomorrow we're going to learn the rebinding techniques are going to completely change. And so it's best to just leave well enough alone, I think. What else? Oh, there's a clock. There's a clock. This is our final piece, and I apologize that the cold is upon you, and it is getting chilly. So our final piece, and this is a mantle clock. The mantle clock was actually, well, you can see it's got the electric cord. I have to tell you a joke. I have been used by the Antique Roadshow as a researcher. So I'll go and I'll sit and I'll have the 3-day notice. People will line up and we'll say, we want to see this, 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 and this. You've seen the Antiques Roadshow, I'm sure. Anyway, lady was standing there. This is the act. Let's take this. Lady was standing there in line, and she was this little tiny woman, and she had 8 female relatives. And she was standing there, and she was like, Miss Appraiser, look at this. And I said, oh yeah, nice. She says, yes, this was my, literally, it was a lot like this clock. This was my great grandmother's. I said, really? She said, yes, and all of my relatives behind me can testify that this is my great grandmother's. Meanwhile, the electric cord is trailing behind her. I said, I don't think it is. She said, you don't know your business, you don't know your job. Of course it's my great grandmother. It was hysterical. It was in her head that was it. This falls into the classification of really interesting kitsch, because it's so funny looking, and the idea that a covered wagon would have a clock in the middle of it is just, who thought of this, right? Who thought of that? and you know, this 1950s kind of thing. Well, there was a whole thing. My brother, growing up, I guess he was born, he's a little older than me, but my mother did his bedroom in wagon wheels. And remember that furniture? You used to be able to buy the boys' furniture that was cowboy. There was cowboy sheets. So this falls into that trend in the late 50s, the early 60s, where it was the cowboy whatever. And so this is a covered wagon, which by some miracle has a clock with a very delicate Roman style, or no, Arabic style numbering. One only wonders what the candlesticks look like. Maybe 2 pistols on either side. The value of this, I'd say, just because there are collectors for this sort of level of unbelievableness, they're probably $300 to $400. Yeah. Oh, okay, thank you. Apparently we have one more, and then we're going to get up and run around the block a couple of times. So this is a little filigree silver bracelet, and it's meant to be in the style of a watch, and it has a little rock crystal net that has a tiny little stone and 2 emeralds on either side. The value of this, I think, is probably $400 to $500 because the filigree is so beautifully done. But here again, I'm not a gemologist, and I don't know the quality of the emeralds and the diamonds, so I can't give you an evaluation of the stones. But the idea was that this is coming from a certain period in history, the 1920s. And this filigree work was done usually in sterling and also in white gold in the 1920s. And it's a style that you recognize right away as 1920s. So that you'd need a jeweler to look at the emeralds and the diamonds on that. Or you could just let me have it because I like it. And I think that's it. And I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. It's cold.